gardeners. Hope you're having a wonderful morning. Green Garden Guy is always learning stuff. Okay, as never a day goes by that I don't find out something new about gardening. So, congratulations if you managed to learn anything from me. But I'm learning stuff from myself for years and years now. I mean, I go back probably 40 years at least that I'd been trying to grow jicama. Jicama, they call it yam bean or Mexican turnip. It's that brown turnip-shaped tuber. You can buy it in specialty stores, sometimes on the regular produce counter, other times Mexican markets. It's definitely a Mexican food. But I grew pretty fond of it. It's a nice, crunchy, sweet sort of a flavor, almost like a fruit, even though it comes up from the ground. And it works really well in salads. It's really good in almost any kind of a salad. And I kind of enjoy the stuff. It's refreshing and so on, but I've never been able to grow it. I have tried numerous times, at least twice in the past that I can recall. I once tried to sow jicama in Wisconsin, and of course Wisconsin's got a cold winter, so you sow it in spring. So I started the plants in the greenhouse and moved them out into the field in spring. I got enormous vines. I just got huge vines. I had vines almost 30 feet long on those plants up in Wisconsin, but nothing underneath the plant, just spindly little roots. No delicious tuber. Okay, so I tried again a couple of times, I believe, when I was in the Midwest, and nothing happened again. Same problem. Big vines, no roots. And then, of course, the plant's tropical, so it would die in the winter, and that was the end of that. I tried again in California, where weather is more mild around the Bay Area. But again, because the yam bean or the jicama is a tropical legume, I decided that, again, planting it in spring, so I went ahead and I started the plants in the greenhouse in late winter, transplanted them out into the field during the early spring. Plant took off, completely covered the roof of my Union City house by the end of summer, had lavender purplish flowers all over it. It was pretty. It was a nice looking legume vine, but there was nothing underneath it. Well, at that point, I just said, oh, forget it. I give up on the stuff, and so I didn't even think about it again. Then, after moving to Hawaii, I do see the root in the farmers markets here frequently. It's a pretty common plant. Well, I was looking through University of Hawaii's seed list for farmers and gardeners, and I noticed they had jicama seeds on there from the university. So I decided, yeah, I think I'll order some of those from the university's website for gardeners. They're only $1 a package. All of the university seed to gardeners is only $1 per package. I've said this before, but I think it's a fabulous service. Anywho, stapled to my little bag of jicama seeds was a little paper note that somebody had typewritten. It says, plant in September. I'm going, oh, plant in September. Well, that was never possible for me living in the temperate climates. Now that we're on the Tropic of Cancer here, we have a mild winter, there's no frost, and so planting it in September was feasible. I followed the instructions like a good gardener, and son of a gun, the vines didn't grow very long during the winter time. They were relatively short. I think at the best I maybe had 2 foot of vine growth above the ground. But son of a gun, underneath the plants, pop, 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 big old turnips are forming. The problem with jicama is you can't get the root to form during long days. The root has to form during short days. So if you get it started in September, it bulbs out into a root that would store food then to pop back out later on when the weather is suitable for it to produce flowers, seeds, and all. So it's actually got 2 complete different cycles. On short days, it makes the part that we eat, and on long days, it makes the pods, flowers, and seeds, and so on, so it can perpetuate itself. Anyhow, I had a bunch of my jicama down low at the very bottom over here of the property, where anybody who's been watching the videos knows that my cabbages went underwater several times. Well, the jicama went underwater with them too. Cabbages didn't mind. The jicama, pop, just like popcorn. all the turnips went boom, and they just exploded. And so when I went down to look to see what I had, all I had was fragments, and the insects and the mold and everything were getting into it. I'm going, son of a gun, look at that. I actually did raise jicama, but it blew up because it got too wet. So obviously with jicama, it requires very, very fast drainage. So if the drainage is good, then it won't take up too much water. You definitely don't want to plant it where it floods. That was a real mistake. Anyway, so up in the nursery, I still had jicama plants in containers because I've been selling them to the public to put into their gardens. And well, the day I walked by the jicama plants and kind of scratched the soil, looked down in there, and it went, whoa, because here we got a little scrawny jicama vine about 18 inches long or so, you know, growing out of a 1-gallon container. But hey, there's a big old tuber inside the 1-gallon pots. Every one of these pots that I pick up, here's another one. Great big old tuber inside the pot. Well, of course, these didn't blow up because they're in containers, and during the heavy rain just ran right through. This really brings to mind something. Not only is it possible to grow really nice looking jicama in really small pots, this is pretty cool actually, but if you're in the northern latitudes, then of course you're not going to be able to grow this in your summer garden. But if you have a greenhouse, so you can plant them in the fall to grow during the short days of the year inside, guess what? You're going to get jicama in little tiny pots like this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to extract one of these roots. So here we have our jicama plant, and you can see right there, see the tuber formed inside the 1-gallon container? I think that's really a kick. Now, the only thing bad, I guess, about jicama is that if you're going to save your own seeds, you're going to have to leave some of it in the ground for the following spring so it can grow up into a vine and flower. But if you're not, you just kind of cut that thing off there. That. How we go? Isn't that cute? I think that's just so beautiful. Right inside that little can here on my nursery bench, we're getting jicama, and then trim the root off the end of it there. Alrighty, well, now I'm going to go into the kitchen, wash this puppy up, and we're going to give it a try. Right here we have our beautiful little yam bean tuber grown in a 1-gallon container. This worked out so well in a pot that I do believe that I may be growing it in containers myself, because it keeps it away from the bugs, keeps the drainage good, a lot of other things, keeps the tuber pretty clean, the potting soil is nice and clean. And so, next thing we do is peel the jicama, which peels pretty easily. You get the knife underneath it and pull like that. Because the skin lifts off the tuber, you don't need to peel away a lot of the good stuff. Just the skin comes up. Now, jicama is a legume. It's in the pea and bean family. And so it does fix nitrogen. I imagine the nitrogen fixing goes on mostly while the plant is in the growth stage during the summer. Okay, there we go. Peeled real nice. Beautiful, huh? Isn't that cute? Texture. Texture reminds me slightly of water chestnuts. It's wet, it's crunchy, it has fiber, not a lot, but it's there. You can feel the fibers in between the teeth. Yeah, so a lot like water chestnut in the mouth, but the flavor actually, to me, reminds me a little bit more of peas or green beans, just slightly. A little bit of that kind of green beany taste in here. It's sweet. Oh, you know what else this reminds me of? This reminds me of an Asian pear. The texture of this is a whole lot like an Asian pear. Now, it's not as sweet, nor is it as juicy as an Asian pear. So an Asian pear is definitely a fruit, and this is definitely a vegetable. But it's a pretty sweet vegetable, and so it goes really well in salads. It'll also work in a stir fry as a sub for water chestnut. I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of things we can do with this. I'm actually going to make a sweet potato salad this afternoon using the purple Taiwan sweet potato and the orange mainland sweet potato combined with jicama in the salad. I believe I'll use a sesame and parsley dressing on there with tahini. Anyhow, it's not quite a fruit, but the only other vegetables I can think of that are similar to this are both water chestnut, which is not quite as sweet and it has a little different flavor, or yacon. Now, yacon is a sunflower from the Andes. Some of you may know this plant that makes tubers under the ground too. It's kind of related to Jerusalem artichokes, but the tubers on yacon are large. They're yam-shaped and size of a yam and bigger. It again has a similar texture. Yacon actually tastes sweeter than jicama does. This is a really cool vegetable. I highly recommend anybody who lives in tropical environments with warm winters like Florida, Southern California, and otherwise, you give this a try right out in the garden. But for those of you who live in the northern tier, well, Bill just discovered I can grow this thing in a pot during the wintertime and get a nice piece of produce out of it. So I just recommend you give it a try inside the greenhouse. Happy gardening. Aloha. You have a wonderful day.